What's going on, guys? This is Gene Jensen, and in this video I want to show you how you can make your rods last a whole lot longer. Alright, so what I have done is I pulled out a few rods, some of them very, very old, like this. This is an OG Envy Black. It's just been well used, real dirty. I pulled out a frog rod, which is real dirty, and we're going to talk about how to clean your rod, how to maintain it, and how to ultimately make it last longer. So to start off with, when I'm cleaning a rod, this is a perfect time of the year to do it. And when I'm cleaning a rod, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm either going to get a rag, or right here I've got a Mr. Clean Magic Eraser. But I'm just going to get the guides damp to start with and kind of let them soak. And so either, like I said, with a wet rag or with this, you just go down the guides and just get them wet. Because what has happened over time is your line picks up dirt and muck off the water surface, and as it passes through the guides scrape that muck off, and they just kind of hang on to it a little bit. And so that's all I'm going to do is just kind of wipe that down and get them moist and get that gunk that's dried on there, get it wet, so when I come back through I can clean it. Also going to do that with the reel seat. I want you to zoom in real quick, Jordan. That reel seat is just junky. Absolutely a mess. Oh, this was a prototype frog rod because it doesn't have the markings on it. Same thing. I'm going to take that Mr. Clean Magic Eraser. I'm going to unscrew everything, pop it off. Go. Boy, it is junky. This was, like I said, this is a prototype, so the glue is, you can see the glue on it and everything else. It's pretty cool. But look at how dirty how the dirt that's coming off of that magic eraser. Just gonna kind of wipe it down. All right, and so then what I'm going to do is now that has soaked just a little bit, I'm going to really scrub the rod. Try to get the guides as good as I can right now, and I'm going to come back through with a Q-tip and get the rest of it. But I'm just going to wipe the rod down. And these little Mr. Clean Magic Erasers are dynamite for several things. You'll see it in a couple of the cleaning videos that I do. It really does get the dirt out and gets it out really easy. So that's just one wipe down. Okay. Then I'm just going to get a Q-tip, get it wet. And I'm going to go through these guides. I'm going to go around the foot of the guide, get in little areas that the Mr. Clean couldn't get. A lot of the places that cake on, I'm going to have Jordan zoom in, it'll cake on right on the inside edge and the outside edge of the guide on the top. And so you just really want to get that top real good with a Q-tip. See, look, that was just one wipe and it's already kind of dirty. And because you got it moist to start with, it comes off pretty easy. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to pay attention to is going to be the reel grip. Okay, and with the EVA foam, there's not really much you can do except for just kind of wipe it down. So all you're going to do is just kind of wipe it down. You don't want to do it too much. Look at that, how gnarly that is. And so just gets a little bit of the dirt off of it. Now, with Cork is a whole different animal. And this one's perfect. You can tell this one's been well used. It no longer even looks like Cork. It's almost as black as the EVA foam. But what you do is you take your magic eraser, and it's good and wet, and I'm just going to start scrubbing it. I want you to remember how dark that thing was to start with. Look at that. Look at how nice and pretty and clean that is. And that's all that took. And I'm going to do that to every single one of my rods. I'm going to make sure the reel seats are clean. They get really, really gunky, and it's one of those places that you never check. Clean up clean up the guides. Now, last but not least, what you want to do is you want to check, especially when you've got a rod with ceramic guides, which most do. you want to check for fractures in your ceramic guides. And a lot of times, and I'm famous for this because I don't know how many times I've done this, not paying attention, you're reeling up like a Carolina rig with a tungsten weight on the end, or even a Texas rig with a tungsten weight, and you reel it up and whack, you hit the tip of your rod and it chips your rod, and before you know it, you're reeling in your line and you start seeing little frays in your line if you're using braid or fluorocarbon, or your line just breaks for no reason. The first thing I'm going to check is I'm going to check that tip top guide, and then I'm going to go down and check all the other guides. And the best way to do that is with a dry Q-tip. Literally all you got to do is just take it and spin it on both sides of each of the guides, and if that cotton on that Q-tip snags, you've got a fractured guide. If it's cracked, it'll pick it up. If it's, like I said, if it's fractured, it'll pick it up. And that's all I'm going to do is I'm just going to go from one to the next, and I'm just going to double check and make sure that those guides aren't broken. And if they are, the best thing to do, especially if it's a tip top, is you can replace them pretty easy. But if you're not comfortable replacing them, and I'll link to a video that I've done that with. Oh, boy, that's an old video. But anyway, take it to a repair guy, find your local tackle shop or a tackle shop close by, get on Facebook, and there's a lot of guys on there that will fix that tip top guide for you. Another thing I do, especially with 13, is if you do have to replace a tip top, you can get in touch with their customer service, and pretty quickly they'll get you an extra tip top that matches the exact size that you need for your rod, and then you can go ahead and get it repaired. All right, so real quick, let's talk about protection of the rods when you're transporting them and when you're storing them and stuff like that. First thing is bent guides. A lot of guys talk about their guides bending, and for me, I can only speak from my own experience. I do it a lot, and it's always either this guide or this guide on the rod. So you've got the one closest to the reel, and it goes up, and it's always this one or this one. And I'm like, man, what is going on where those are always the ones that are bent? And I got to thinking, what do I do? It's 9 times out of 10 it's user error anyway. So I got to think of what do I do? What do I do to cause those things to bend? And my bad habit is I'll have 4 or 5 rods, 6 rods, and they'll all be in rod sleeves, which we'll talk about in a second. And I grab them right here, and I squeeze them to hold them together because they've got reels on them, and it's the weight and everything else. And I grab them to go through doors and stuff like that. And when I grab them like that, and right there, what happens? Those guides bend. So when you're transporting your rods by hand from your shop to your truck or to your boat or whatever to your car, be careful not to squeeze too hard right here, because that's when the bending happens. Now, how do you protect your rod guides and your tip top and stuff like that when you're in storage or when you're transporting them in your car or your boat? Rod sleeves. I remember when these came out, and they've been out for years and years and years, but they protect your rod and protect your tip and your guides. And the best one that I've found on the market, and I'm not sponsored by them, is Trc Rod Covers. And I'm going to put a link down in the description to them. It's a small company. They've got this fat end that they've dipped in whatever they dip it in, and it's really solid and hard and everything else, and it keeps your tips from being broken inside these things. So you take and slide your rod sleeves on, and your tip goes right up in that little hollow spot, and it's real hard. I mean, you can squeeze, if you squeeze hard enough, you can flatten this, but it's real hard to squeeze, and it really does protect your rod tip. Another thing that these things are really good for is if you've got multiple rods. If you're cramming them in a rod locker or cramming them in your car and you got to transport them together, they keep them from tangling up. They keep them from getting messed up with each other and banging up against each other or anything else. They're just really, really protective. So get you some rod covers. I don't know how much they're. You can get them for as low as $5 all the way up to as much as you want to spend on them. But rod covers can save your tail and save you a lot of money. Well, that's about it. But in my next video, what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to talk about cork care. I've touched a little bit of it on this, about it on this video about cleaning. But there's some things that you can do to cork handles that can make them last longer. If you get a brand new rod, you can do it, and it will make that rod look brand new for the rest of its life. Or you take an old rod and you clean it up and you do some certain things to the cork and so on and so forth to make it look brand new. I'm going to show you how to do that in the next video, but Until then, like I always say, be sure to introduce somebody to fishing. Introduce them to my channel. Let me help you teach them how to fish. More importantly, get out on the water. Go out and catch some fish and have a great day. We'll see you.